A small farmer to stay in business without access to credit. Most are dependent on loans from the United States Department of Agriculture to get them through from crop to crop. But while the money for those loans comes from Washington, the Agriculture Department officials who approve them are elected in local counties. As we reported last November, for black farmers, that's been a problem because they say the white-controlled local committees discriminate against them by not granting them the loans they in fact qualify for.
Them that's got shall have, them that's not shall lose. So the Bible says, and it's still in news. Mama may have, Papa may have, but God bless the child that's got it wrong.
Them that's got shall get. Them that's not shall lose. Them that's got shall get. Them that's not shall lose.
Eddie Ross says that's what happened to him. Ross is a farmer in Vicksburg, Mississippi. For 12 years, he successfully managed a 1,000-acre farm for a local white landowner. But Ross wanted to farm on his own.
I wanted more out of life than just staying there on a farm, getting a basic farm salary, and I wanted to have a future in farming just as my grandfather and the people before him did.
So in 1991, Ross, like most other small farmers in the area, black and white, went to the local office of the Department of Agriculture to apply for a loan. He needed the money to buy seed and rent equipment so he could farm 775 acres of land for himself, money he would eventually pay back when his crop went to market. But the committee, 3 locally elected white men, turned him down.
They just said it was inadequate management ability to farm a farm of that size.
Did you talk to them? Did you say, look, I've been farming 1,000 acres over here
Yes.
for 12 years?
Yes.
How did you feel when they turned you down?
It really was a big disappointment to my family and the community where I live.
Ross felt he had been unfairly rejected, so he filed a discrimination complaint with the Agriculture Department's state office. But by the time it ruled in his favor, it was too late to plant. So Ross waited and reapplied the following year, and again the year after that. Each year after being turned down, he filed a civil rights complaint. Finally, in 1993, the local committee granted Ross a loan.
I got the money on time, and mid-season in July, while the cotton was growing and needed attention, the county supervisor stopped the operating funds. And his reason for doing that was that I had filed legal actions and civil rights complaints.
What did that have to do with filing for the loan?
Well, it didn't have anything to do with filing for a loan. It was clear-cut discrimination there.
And by him stopping the operating funds, what's the result of that?
The crop that was in the field just went to waste.
Frustrated by what was happening to him in Mississippi, Ross decided to take his complaints to Washington. Over the last few years, he has made the 20-hour drive some 30 times to join hundreds of other black farmers protesting similar mistreatment.
If you want to eat, get on your feet. If you want to eat, get on your feet.
How long will you keep doing this? How many times will you come back to Washington?
I'll keep coming back to Washington until they resolve this case.
It was demonstrations by black farmers like Ross that first made Secretary of Agriculture Dan Glickman aware that he had a problem.
There is no question that in a lot of places in the country, minority farmers did not get the loans that non-minority farmers would get, operating loans. And in some cases, we had thwarted farmers and maybe contributed to their demise in agriculture. So it was a very serious problem.
A very serious problem on the local level, but also in Washington. Back in 1983, the Agriculture Department's National Office of Civil Rights, the office responsible for policing civil rights abuses at the local level, had its budget cut. And for the next 14 years, complaints from black farmers just piled up because there was no one to look at them. Last year, Lloyd Wright was brought in to take over the national office and clean up the mess.
So if you're a black farmer who had a civil rights complaint during that period, what happened to your complaint?
Not much, to give you the bottom line.
We've heard stories of complaints literally being thrown in the trash can because there was no structure to deal with them. Is that
Some
true?
of that occurred. And some of the ones filed at the county level were thrown in the trash while the farmer was still in the office.
Wright was even more disturbed once he started reviewing the backlog of individual cases.
I reviewed one case where a very senior farmer had gone out of business, and it turned out that the office manager had a check in the safe that had that check been given to the farmer, he would never have gone out of business.
Charlie Featherstone is the office manager accused of holding back that farmer's check. He's now retired, but for 25 years, Featherstone ran the local agriculture department office in Brunswick County, Virginia. We met him at the local pork festival.
How do you feel about black farmers?
I'm all for. I'm for any farm.
You never discriminated against anyone because of their color.
No, sir.
And anyone who says that is just mistaken, just plain wrong.
Yes, sir.
Featherstone also denies charges from black farmers that he would routinely sleep in his office while they waited outside to see him.
Sometimes when I had to think of something or did quite a bit of calculations in the head, sometimes atmospheric pressures would close my eyes to do that.
The atmospheric pressure would close your eyes.
Yes, sir.
But Calvin Brown, a farmer in Brunswick County, says atmospheric pressure had nothing to do with it. He says plainly and simply that Featherstone just didn't like black people.
He was prejudiced against color. Mr. Featherstone definitely was prejudiced against color.
What did he do?
It's what he didn't do. He treated the farmers, like they were dead, really. I called him at the time King Charles.
Brown farms tobacco on land that was passed down to him from his father. Back in 1984, Featherstone required Brown to keep his USDA loan in a supervised account that needed Featherstone's signature for withdrawal. But when Brown needed money to rent a barn to dry his harvested tobacco, Featherstone was nowhere to be found.
I couldn't get him on the phone, couldn't get him in person. He was in his office.
In the meantime, your tobacco's sitting outside.
Running.
If the tobacco doesn't go in the barn, you're going to lose it.
Going to lose it. To me, this was deliberate trying to destroy me.
Why would he want to do that?
I don't know why, unless that's because I was black.
So that year, 1984, after losing his crop, Brown filed a discrimination complaint with the USDA.
When did you finally hear from the Agriculture Department?
I just heard from him this year.
13, 14 years later.
That's right.
That's when Brown got this letter saying the Office of Civil Rights was continuing to process his complaint.
After your experience with Charlie Featherstone, did you continue to borrow money from the Department of Agriculture?
They wouldn't lend me money.
Why?
They said I didn't qualify.
And where do you get credit from today?
Oh, I got all kind of credit today. I even have a platinum credit card.
So you have a platinum credit card with a line of credit of
$18,600, I believe.
$18,600.
Mm-hmm. Sure do.
Yet Charlie Featherstone didn't want to give you any money.
He didn't want to give me any money.
Today, Brown, who says he'll never have anything to do with the government again, has signed on to a $2.5 billion class action lawsuit against the Agriculture Department for past discrimination. Some 600 other black farmers have already joined the suit. J.L. Chestnut, at one time a lawyer for Dr. Martin Luther King, is one of their attorneys.
And we are living at a time when if anywhere you listen, there are folk who saying that racism is a thing of the past. This case represents the most effective rebuttal to that mythology I know.
Chestnut and Al Pyries, another lawyer on the case, hold regular meetings of black farmers. This one is in Chula, Mississippi.
You said that this lawsuit is about money.
It is. It's about white people afraid to admit that they don't want to give black people what they should have got. It's all about money.
But money for whom? How does the Agriculture Department determine who deserves what? And for that matter, who has really been mistreated and who might just be jumping on the bandwagon of an explosive political issue.
There are some of the cases that have been filed that do not justify relief and ought not to be settled and ought to be dismissed. But there are an awful lot of cases that are legitimate and justifiable, and we have to differentiate between the two.
Secretary of Agriculture Glickman told us he feels the department should settle complaints on a case-by-case basis. But the lawyers in the class action suit don't see it that way.
Don't you have to examine the merits of each case?
No, because the pattern in every single one of them is the same. It's the same thing, which is file a discrimination complaint, government doesn't process it. That's denial of due process every single time.
I just can't give somebody a check because they come in and ask for one. I do still have to prove the case. And by the way, it may just be that the farmers may get a little more money and the lawyers may get a little less money with some of these administrative settlements than it will come with the class action.
Some people, like the class action lawyers, for example, say that the Department of Agriculture is racist from top to bottom. There are other people who will tell you that there really is no big problem here. Where's the truth?
Somewhere in between. I think we have some racism in the department. And if there's anything different in the department than you'd find elsewhere, is I think we have too many people that's willing to tolerate racism.
Some farmers have told me that they regard the Department of Agriculture as the last plantation.
I can understand why they would. Hopefully that's changing and it's going to change.
But for the 600 black farmers in the lawsuit, things aren't changing fast enough. Remember Eddie Ross? A year ago, the government agreed to settle his discrimination complaint for a reported $500,000. But Ross is still waiting for the bulk of the money because for the past year, the government has maintained that there is a statute of limitations on the complaints he filed before 1993.
And they're now telling you that even though your complaints are valid, they can't pay you for those complaints because they're too old, even though for the period in which you had those complaints, they had no system in place to deal with it.
Correct. That's exactly what they're telling us.
Seem fair to you?
No, they're punishing us for their faults.
Just last month, Congress voted to eliminate the statute of limitations, so in theory, Ross should finally get his money. But to date, that has not happened. In the meantime, Ross is back doing work for white farmers and often goes by the land he almost worked for himself.
I drive by that farm quite often, and it gives me the feeling that I've been cheated and that the promise of the American way is for certain people. And as of now, I feel that I'm not one of those people.
After our story aired, the government settled Eddie Ross's complaint for an undisclosed amount of money. The government also agreed to settle with the 28,000 other black farmers who have signed on to the class action lawsuit by giving each one $50,000 tax-free and writing off all their past debt.
And shout for victory.
You already been told once, nigger. Now we don't want to have to tell you again. You go making any more trouble or flapping them boot lips off to any of them federal men, and we sure as hell gonna have to put you in the ground, boy, and that's without a pine box. You understand me?
How do you think the Negroes have been treated here in Mississippi?
They're treated about fair. About as good as they ought to be.
If you ask me, the niggas around here have been treated awful bad for a long time.
Again, I think Martin Luther King's one of the leaders. I mean, J. Edgar Hoover said that he was a communist, and they had proof to that effect, but I don't know that for sure. I hadn't seen it myself, but that's what they say.
They say we've got to eat together and use the same bathroom as the niggers. And that's awful hard for some Mississippi folks to do.
They're not like us. They don't take baths. They stink. They're nasty.
What do you think has happened to the three boys?
Dead. Just as dead as they can be.